thank you everyone for being here and welcome. My name is Val. I am one of the organizers of the program called Bloom, which you probably found out about this through. And this is the third Fireside chat that we've had for season 0 of our cohort. So Bloom is a blockchain development program for women and genderqueer folks. And as a part of this program, we want to make sure that people participating in the Bloom community at large get exposure to experts in the space, mainly who are women and genderqueer folks. So that's what our Fireside chats are about. And we're really excited to have Rox. So Rox is actually one of the participants in Bloom on the architecture track, but already has experience in Web3 as a designer. So I will let Rox just take it away from here.
Yeah, thanks, Val. So let me share my presentation. Okay, so as Val briefly introduced, there's so much to cover, so I just kind of want to get started right away. But as she had mentioned, prior to me starting in this workshop, I was previously the first designer in the founding product team of an NFT startup, an NFT marketplace that was built on the Tezos blockchain. So my experience actually up to this point has been in working on a different blockchain from Ethereum, but there are parallels and there are also unique differences. So I'm just going to dive right in. The topic of this workshop is on designing crypto wallets for creators. So what we're going to get to work on today. First, we're going to go through, at least I know in the architecture track, we talked about good and bad use cases for building on a blockchain. So from my own experience, actually, working in a startup, we constantly asked ourselves, like, why make this into an NFT? Like, can we do this without making it into an NFT? Why build this on the blockchain? Can we do it off chain? So we were constantly stress testing, like whether or not it's a good use case to build or not build on the blockchain. And we're going to talk through one good use case today, which I'm going to say I don't take credit for. This is definitely Gabrielle's use case, and I love it. And actually, it ties so well into what I solved for in the startup that I was at. So I'm going to give you an example of, my design process and how we work through solving for this use case. And then after that, I'm going to give you a really quick and dirty, like personal design exploration. So give you a flavor of like some examples from my work and then some personal examples of just like that I explored to show you a breadth and a depth of the design process and the different visual artifacts that I create as I start to understand the problem space, the user, the kinds of concepts that I might like put out to test and validate based on what I want to learn. And then it's your turn. So this is going to be a really hands-on design activity so that you start to become familiar with the different kinds of visual artifacts we create in design in the product development process. And also, hopefully, this can help you as you're building out your pitch deck or your demos or whatever. And then after that, we regroup to share out. So what I hope you walk away with after this workshop, more than anything, I really hope that you feel confident to solve human problems with design. And, the tech piece, I think Gabrielle and Val are covering, both in the architecture and engineering track. So hopefully this workshop is going to help you have design as a tool as you're solving these problems, not only from the engineering and architecture perspective, but also from the design and championing users. So some of the things that we're going to go over in the different processes and the different parts of the design process, uncovering user needs, their goals, pain points that they may encounter in their experience and points of friction, how to actually conduct design research. So what kind of mental models do you want to pull from? What kind of patterns do you want your designs to be inspired by? Also, how to choose and create the right visual artifacts. Depending on what stage you are in the product development process, you're going to have to show a lot of visual artifacts to document and really go process through your thinking, and then also be able to communicate that, because constantly in product development, you're communicating with stakeholders, you're user testing with designer or with users. And so you're constantly having to ask, what's the right kind of visual artifact to show to be able to learn what I need to learn to develop the product forward. And then after that, new tools and resources to create these artifacts, hopefully for your pitch deck, your use case, whatever. So getting into a good use case for blockchain. getting credit and getting paid for your creative online work. So again, when Gabrielle and I were having this conversation, she told me about the Black TikTok strike, which is like, I'm not on TikTok, but if you are an online content creator and you're producing a lot of great work on social media platforms, one, you don't own this content because the platforms own your content. But then two, as you start to gain a following, you start to get recognized, and then you start to get paid for producing this content, that then often you find yourself not getting credit for the original work or getting underpaid, or that content is stolen. So it's like you find yourself caught in a bind. It's like you need to make a living from that work that you're getting recognized for, but then at the same time, like you as an online content creator, especially if you're a woman, a genderqueer, or a BIPOC creator, you find yourself like not getting paid as much as your peers or not getting that credit. So it's like you find yourself in that pickle. And so that's like a kind of, with a proliferation of really great online content and social media platforms, there's this problem with the lack of transparency and accountability and who owns this content, who's getting the credit for the original work, and how are creators monetizing this work. When we realize that like there's so many creatives out there and they're now getting the kind of platform for their work. You see here to the right, ways that it's starting to be mitigated is like there's this Instagram called influencer pay gap that actually, and like anonymous people will send like how much they're getting paid to produce what content, how much does like a company get rights to this, and like how much are they paying for it. And you see at the top somebody saying like, oh, they work at influencer marketing and they're getting frustrated because they're told to underpay people constantly. 500 for someone with 50,000 followers, 1,000 for somebody with 100,000. And then here, Asian American women's talking about, hey, like stats on followers that I have. And then like Microsoft pitched this campaign deal and I had to make all this shit like for this much. Whether it's good or not is like question based on like how you perceive it. But there's a reason why the influencer pay gap exists on Instagram, is because there's lack of transparency and accountability. So how do we solve for that? And that's like kind of where it becomes like, if we know that the promise of blockchain is to increase the transparency and the fluidity of peer-to-peer transactions, and to also have this immutable record where everybody can see like, where the origin of this work is and who traced the ownership from peer to peer, then that becomes a really good use case for this, where creators are putting out great work online and they have fans and followers who want to support and buy what they put out. We also know, like us in previous classes, like you guys started exploring crypto wallets and how to develop crypto wallets. If we took crypto wallets as a tool that people use to be able to transact on the blockchain, then how might we design crypto wallets for online content creators so that they can conduct their business on the blockchain? One that might help them understand and feel confident creating and using crypto wallets for their business. Two, how do we design crypto wallets for these creators that helps them monetize their creative labor and then get paid for the use and reuse of their content? And then also demonstrate proof that they're the original creator and owner of their work. So that's the design challenge. I'm going to take you through what I actually did when I was at Truzy. And so this is showing you kind of part of my process and part of the examples. And honestly, feel free to like jump in and ask any questions, from like high level bird's eye view to like tactical things. So this here was an urban hip hop artist that we worked with, Bua. He actually created these NFTs that we minted and listed on our marketplace. And, he told us this. When he was vetting all the NFT marketplaces, he ultimately chose ours. He said, you have to take the time to educate yourself and your fans, so they'll take the journey with you. Going from all of these like transacting on a Web2 experience to a Web3, all the kind of paradigms to date about how you actually buy something online might be different, or is going to be different in Web3. And so he took the time to like try out how it works on Truzy, and then try out how it works on like Foundation or Zora, or Super Rare or whatever. And he was like, you know why I chose you guys? Because it was so easy to buy my own NFT on your platform compared to others. So part of how I thought about onboarding people to create and connect their wallet on our marketplace was I actually audited a bunch of marketplaces and a bunch of different wallets. And this is the visual artifact that I usually create so that I can better understand how my competitors are doing it, how other third-party products like wallets, integrated or not integrated or connected to, dApps or websites or whatever are doing it. So it's just basically all the digital touch points of interaction in the user experience. And I would focus it on like a very specific flow. So in this case, it's like, how do I bid on an NFT? I bid on an NFT and I have to do all these things to be able to bid. So I kind of start with that kind of prompt for myself as I begin to think through different user flows within the whole kind of experience. As you can see here, there's like a PDP that happens, right? And then I get to this bid page and I'm like, oh, wait, like a wallet is not connecting. So I'm like, okay, well, what does that mean? What do I need to connect? What kind of wallets can I connect? Shows here on Foundation, I can connect a MetaMask web wallet or this thing called Wallet Connect, which allows me, I guess, to connect native mobile wallets. I decide to go the MetaMask web wallet route. And actually, I have to go to this third-party site, download this plugin, import this thing called like a seed phrase, and then go back to the Foundation site. So you imagine already, if I've never transacted before and I have to open this wallet, have to download this plugin, have to like all of these like things. Imagine when you're bidding on something and you've already like 10 people have already bid while you're just setting up your wallet. And then by the time you get back to the bid page, it's already so high, you don't want to bid anymore. So imagine the amount of friction that people have to go through to like actually do the thing that they want to do.
One question that came in, you mentioned PDP. What does that stand for?
Yes, PDP stands for product detail page. So in e-commerce sites, a lot of people just shorten that, and it's a very, very common e-commerce term. But this is also another thing that we always do when we're auditing is like, we always think about like, what are all the pages that people are interacting with to complete a whole user flow. So this really helps you orient like, oh, did it happen in the page? Did it happen like in this like next page after? You're always thinking about interaction within a screen and between screens. And then these are markers to show you like the different pages that you're interacting with. Okay, so now I'm back in this bid page and it's like, I still actually need to connect it. And then actually when I went through that, I'm like, there's so much of this really confusing nomenclature. I still kind of have no fucking idea what I'm doing, but yes, 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 I'm now on the bid page and I'm able to bid. So now I'm going to show you comparatively how I work through solving for a better onboarding flow on Truzy. There's a Tezos web wallet called Kukai. And I don't know if anybody has experimented on Hicket which is like a super popular NFT marketplace on the Tezos blockchain. But Kukai is the Tezos web wallet to like MetaMask's Ethereum web wallet. As you can see now, here's actually a PDP that we had. And we hit a checkout page, right? Wallet not connected on Truzy, as I'm already showing you comparatively. It's probably half or less than half of like the pages that you go through on Foundation. And I'm not going to go through here because I'm going to zoom in on the different pieces of that flow. So how we helped creators make it as frictionless as possible for their fans to buy their first NFT. So our audience was like buying NFTs for the very first time. And we wanted to make it as frictionless as possible because at the end of the day, if we're serving creators who want to put out this work and increase the peer-to-peer transaction, like we have to make sure that we don't make their fans think too hard to purchase that NFT and support their creator. So rule number one, don't make me think. We try to reduce as many clicks to purchase as we could, and it took us 4 clicks to purchase. How did we do that? First things first, when you're transitioning into, from web 2 e-commerce patterns to like web 3 e-commerce patterns, or just, transactional patterns, think about the nomenclature. So first thing, I was like, what the hell does connect wallet mean? Like I couldn't grapple with the idea, because I was so used to sign into this, sign into that, log in, or create a new account. So that's not to say you don't want to challenge existing patterns in web 2, but that you can borrow so long as you know who your end audience is. And if it's more confusing to say connect wallet versus sign in to or create an account or create a wallet, really challenge the kind of words that you use to help people make sense of what you want them to do. Number 3, the biggest thing that we actually did was we kept the wallet creation on site. We let people create a new Tezos wallet on the site at the point of checkout with a social sign-in. So they could use a Twitter or a Gmail account to create a new wallet. Number 4, in design, we always think about designing for defaults. So by default, we chose to have that let you pay with a credit cards first with Stripe, because we knew our end audience was actually going to buy their NFT for the first time. So maybe they'll buy their NFT with a credit card the first time, second time, maybe the third time they're going to fund their wallet with Tez and then pay with actual cryptocurrency. But we can't expect people buying their NFTs for the first time to buy it with Tez. That's just what we knew about our users. And then displaying the right information at the right time. You don't want to inundate them with TMI, but then you don't want to also not provide the right information to help them actually take an action. This is another example where I just did a really random conceptual exploration. I call it wallet address with a shot of personality.
So one other question that came in was, what about other marketplaces that don't have bidding? Is that just outright buying? Or maybe you can just talk a little bit about some differences.
In terms of NFT marketplaces, this is actually a lot of different interesting things. So there's you will see people can buy right away. People, when you bid, it could either be in an auction, in which other people are bidding, and then there might be a reserve price. I won't go too much more into details with that, but there's actually considerations of whether you would build something on chain versus off chain. Bidding something on chain means that every bid is going to be visible, versus if you do something off chain, there's a potential that you can actually hide who the highest bidder is, how many bids have been placed. It really depends. And this is why we are actually, when we're thinking about features to add in an NFT marketplace, one, also bid mechanics are just you have to consider why you would want to implement a bid mechanic versus just a pay for something right away. So I don't know if anybody has seen StockX, which is a marketplace for sneakers. You can kind of just buy at this price, or you can kind of place a bid based on you can maybe score it for cheaper, or you end up paying more, but that has to do with what you think the inherent value is going to be, and how you want people to kind of interact with raising up the price or of a thing. So yeah, very interesting question, and one we actually did talk about a lot. Okay, so this one, this was an interesting thing for me, was when I first got started and I was kind of trying to understand, I'm what are the differences between these different things? And I honestly thought a wallet address was the same thing as a private key. And once I started realizing it was different, I was really scared that I was going to accidentally copy and paste my private key and share it with somebody, when I was actually supposed to just share my wallet address, which is kind of that public facing, send money here, or get send NFTs here. That was a real reality for me, and I'm sure it was probably for other people. And I put this here because you can see it's like an alphanumeric character string that's like very hard to like memorize or read or even decipher or like tell the difference between. But this is like kind of the key to like making sure you're getting paid and getting the funds as a creator. This is like where you send people to pay you. So one of the things that I do is I audit, and I like to think about it as deconstructing to reconstruct. And so I look at a UI of a competitor. So this is Rainbow. It's a non-custodial mobile crypto wallet that does a good job of improving the UX and making it easier to handle wallets. You can see there's like a giant QR code that now it's like lets anybody scan and copy your wallet address. Services like ENS domains let you put like some human readable like domain that's like kind of borrowing pattern from, domain names. And you can just say that and it's like much easier. But what about the wallet address itself? It's kind of, if you look at the information architecture, the hierarchy, this is like kind of, it's smaller and it's like grayed out. It's kind of like focus the least on this. But I'm like, well, what if I focus the most on that? This is another part of my process that I do, which is called comparative and competitive design research. I just screenshot a bunch of stuff that like, I'm like, oh, I'm going to pull a mental model from here. Like, oh, I like how they tackle that kind of interaction there. So this one is something from Linktree that is a link that a lot of people put in their Instagrams that they can brand and accept payments from. I pull this pattern from 1Password. So like I use 1Password a lot and I don't remember any of my passwords, but when I'm trying to like copy something, I like to show it in large letters because it's like much easier to input and remember and see. And so these are other patterns that I saw. So then this is another part of my process. If I'm thinking about it more from a visual standpoint, I think about typography and just start playing. Honestly, part of design is like you make a bunch of bad shit to then start creating good shit. And there really needs to be no bounds when you start to, explore conceptually. I also, not only visual, I think about like UX stuff, usability stuff. So when you think about a credit card, they break up numbers into chunks of 3 to 4 because it's easier to remember. Like 1Password, they increase the size of the password so that you're not straining your eyes to read what your password is. So what I did here was like, okay, why don't I break up this first 10 into chunks of 3 or 4? And then the last 4, the B39D, what if I made that bigger? Because I'm always like constantly going back and I'm looking at that. And this is what I came up with. I chose these experience principles: memorable, beautiful, personal, because I loved how Linktree lets you like custom brand your Linktree based on, like what your brand looks like and feels like. But then it's like allows you to accept payments. So then I like kind of like, oh, what if I did a branded look on that part where you can scan your QR, like look up have your wallet address. And that's not to say that this is like one of those very early like conceptual explorations, but just kind of like to show you how much you can just try and like push the limit. So now is the design activity. So what I will actually go through with you guys is now we're going to spend the next 25 minutes in whoever's here in teams of 2 to 4. Basically, like define your roles and choose a spokesperson when we do a share out. I just kind of broke it down to simpler steps in the design process, but really there's this big chunk of immersion where you understand your user, you choose a design opportunity to explore, and then you choose like your experience principles that help you guide how your product and your brand should be reflected in your product. In immersion, like I had shown you guys before, I created all these different visual artifacts that document how I work through understanding the problem, researching the competitors and best practices across design and across industries. And then in concepting, one of the kind of big things that we do a lot in design is we ebb and flow between diverging and then converging. So we diverge to like just kind of explore all the possibility of ideas. then we converge to narrow, then we diverge again and like kind of test it out with users. And then we like down select based on like user feedback. And so we really ebb and flow a lot like that in the product development process. And so the key deliverables and concepting are usually visual artifacts that help you communicate your idea and how you're solving the problem with design. So before I go into all the different pieces of like the different elements of this activity, is there any question about the actual things that you are going to do in the design activity before I go in and show you all the different assets that you can use?
Yeah, can we use like a template that already exists from Figma to get started?
Yeah, you can use anything, you can design on anything, and then just as long as you dump it all on this shared Google Slides, just as long as you like dump it there at the end for the share out. But just you can create your visual artifact anywhere and any way that you want. So there's a reason why I like created this trifecta, because of audience, brand and product, and design opportunity. So audience, as represented by personas. So personas are actually just fictitious characters of people that you're looking to build for, or current customers that represent, the people using your product. So of the bajillion things you can build, what are the most important for your user? And personas are visual artifacts that help you make decisions as a designer to prioritize and champion user needs. Brand and product is represented by experience principles. So of the bajillion things you can be, what do you want your users to say and feel about your brand and product? Experience principles help us make decisions that reflect the core benefits of the product and the values of the brand. And then the design opportunity. Of the bajillion things you can do, what's worth pursuing with a large enough market size and demand for? So I'm not going to read through this, but I created a primary user persona for you guys already, because it's just like, it takes so much time to do this, and actually involves guerrilla, like it involves actually talking to subject matter experts or talking to like potential users. But I just created this for you so that you can review this and then start to design for comedic rap artist Aaliyah. I gave you guys 3 different design opportunities. Just choose one to focus on and pursue and conceptualize. So I'll go through and run through this really quickly. The first design opportunity is, how might we design ways to make it more accessible to understand how to create and use a crypto wallet for your business, and what you need to know to keep it safe. So I think you heard this in the architecture track, not your keys, not your crypto, but it's loaded in terms of the people who are privileged enough to say this. Design opportunity number 2, how might we design ways that make it simple, fast, and easy to get paid for your work that you create online and build wealth from the money you made? Design opportunity number 3, how might we design novel forms of ownership, from owning the work you create online to giving your fans fractional ownership of work that you put out? So what does that look like? Now pick 3. I just put these like random experience principles. You can choose 3 from here. You can choose any of your own 3, but these will help you guide your design. And then this is kind of just like an overview. These are links to actual parts of the presentation that I showed an example of. But in immersion, I showed you, audits that I did, comparative and competitive research, color type exploration, user flows, wireframe mockups, interactive clickable prototype. So you can choose from any of these. You're not going to get to all of them, but choose just one that you're interested in exploring or trying, and then you don't need to try and do all of them. And tools and resources. So first, set up how you're going to collaborate. If you only get to immersion, that's fine. Review the user persona, understand their motivations, Choose one of the 3 design opportunities to explore. Choose 3 experience design principles. And then, if you want, start creating visual artifacts that help you process your understanding of the problem or the user. Like, what do you need to do to understand the problem space, competitors? I showed you a lot of different examples from my own work. And if you actually get to concepting, like what kind of artifacts are you going to create based on what you want to learn? So if you say like, my assumption is that creators need this, this is how I solve for that, this is the artifact that I'm going to test. So yeah, I'm going to leave this up here, but the link to, this deck is here in this Fireside Workshop deck, and you can go back to this. But this literally spells out every step. And don't worry about trying to get through all of it. Just pick one you're interested in. I think maybe one thing is like, for whoever the spokesperson is, like, describe what you kind of got to as a work in progress and like concept, or just as a work in progress. And then 2, one thing that you guys found challenging, or you found challenging as a team in this kind of process that might be new to you. So maybe let's start here. Patreon, but crypto.
Okay, that's us. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I was trying frantically to add some screenshots in, but alas.
No worries.
I was in a team with Dan and Liz, who had to leave us for another meeting, unfortunately. So our idea that we briefly touched on was Patreon, but crypto. And it basically focuses on ownership as a creator for music and comedy lovers. If you can go to the next slide. So the experience principles that we wanted to focus on were entertainment, accessibility, and playfulness. And we wanted to riff off the idea that, she is a comedy rapper, and it's possible that using that medium could help to transition her followers into being more curious about crypto. And the best way to do that is to incentivize them, because they are already bought into the idea of her content, to incentivize them to move over to crypto using chunks of her content. So hence the idea of Patreon but crypto, because on Patreon creators offer at different tiers different benefits. So like early access to content, or you get to be a part of the voting on which topic should be covered in this week's video, or exclusive behind the scenes, allowing audience members or fans to purchase their tier membership on a recurring basis in crypto if they want to.
So what's one challenge that, and this can be anyone from the team, what is one challenge that you kind of want to share that you face as in going through this process? Whether it's something that's new to you, what's something that made you uncomfortable, and kind of maybe either not necessarily if you overcame it, or like what you thought about it.
Well, I think it was hard for us to come up with a new idea out of thin air. Like, we kind of jumped in already knowing the persona, and then we were like, okay, so and it was just like through brainstorming and chatting about it that, Thake was like, what if there was a Patreon opportunity? And then that's cool, because with crypto you can do microtransactions, so that's another thing that it's like you could do Patreon but for half a penny every month, which is much more accessible.
Yeah, great call out. All right.
I think something that I struggled with is that it's difficult to think of new ideas, because you like everything already exists in some form. So to try and like get to something that's fresh and original, it's like feels almost insurmountable.
Yeah, that definitely gets really daunting. And actually that's part of why when I do comparative and competitive research, I don't know if you guys ever heard of this. It's like great artist steal. So like when you get so daunted by the idea of like, oh, like I feel like I'm not creating new ideas, it's actually sometimes a cross-pollination of existing ideas that creates a whole new idea, because it's like nobody has built the Lego like that before. And that's like one way that you can think of like pulling from existing ideas to create something new. So looks like I see something here. Not sure who the spokesperson is for the other team, but how about you guys share out your work in progress, and anyone in the team can share something that they found challenging during this activity.
So I did drop links to just like if folks wanted to see where I reference stuff and different ideas. They're here. So there's like UI templates that I stole stuff from. But essentially, so I'm actually trying to create like sort of an AR VR standard marketplace. And so some of the stuff we discussed is just like accessibility, like wallet addresses are really long. So I was actually going over the link that I dropped into the chat earlier. By Tara Tan, who's the venture studio partner at IDEO. One of our team members, is it Fevin? One of you all had mentioned something very similar. Rather than having like a public wallet address be something super long, just have a name. And so I think what we referenced was what 3 words. This one had geolocation. I know for privacy, that's something really important to me. Not everyone's comfortable with that, but if you just had something that had a unique user ID.eth, that was really simple. And I know that domains are a thing, like that would be something easily generated. In terms of 2 last things, which I didn't have time to piece everything, Passkit is something that I've used before for another app that I was creating in Dribble. It was originally created for the Hillary campaign. I actually sent it to them for their mobile wallet, but it was using Passkit. So with Passkit, which is Apple or the iOS universe's like version of sending something and having your card stored locally. I was trying to think like, what if every like thing that you have that's hyper local, you could store like your AR, VR, NFT or 3D asset. The part I haven't conceptualized yet is like what fractional sharing would be. So for a lot of my friends that are artists in AR, VR, they have like a base of a 3D model, but their actual freehand drawing is like maybe what you could pay for. And then the last thing I was saying in terms of other things we discussed for privacy, real identity, also later in this talk, they show like Face ID, which I actually hate Face ID, and I really, really hate.
I hate Face ID too.
So I would not put that in there. So I thought privacy and real identity stuff is just something we didn't have time to talk about at length to solve today, but it is an issue with, marketplaces or other social media apps like BitClout, which is really big. Like, how do you know that that's Ariana Grande coin? Like, how do you know, like Banksy, if that's really his artwork? So we didn't have time to get through like, well, how would we solve that? But I think the 2 easiest things in terms of accessibility is 1, addresses, and then 2, instead of like clicking through a million screens for gas and fees on MetaMask and ETH, is make it as easy as Passkit and make it mobile first or responsive web. And the last thing I was looking at was, so there's this other site called, is it Cryptovoxels that I know a lot of VR people use, but it looks like kind of, what's the word? Like Minecraft, and it's not really perfect for responsive. So that was the reason why I actually really like this exercise with mobile, but we didn't get to solve everything today. So the 2 things I can say is what 3 words and having something as easy as userhandle.eth, and then 2, something as easy as local storage on a mobile device as easy as Passkit, just as an example. It doesn't have to be iOS, just anything really. And the 3rd thing is just questions of like, how do you know real identity of like that artist? If you're not on LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter, like how do you really know? That's something to be like debated, but yeah, that's as far as we got. I know that was a lot, but yeah.
No, that's awesome. And anyone from the team want to share a challenge that they faced during this activity?
Hi, I was actually super intimidated because I'm still like super green to the world of UX, even though like I was saying earlier that I've worked on blockchain teams, but more from the social side. So just kind of like talking with people and managing Discord groups and stuff. But I can say from personal experience, even though I have familiarity, I always have that moment. My boyfriend and I have a rule that's called no Bitcoin before breakfast, which literally means that we're not allowed to deal with anything that has a wallet address until we're like caffeinated and our brains are turned on, because like I'm completely useless. And like I switch numbers and letters in regular language, much less in a wallet address. It's just completely hieroglyphics to me, and I have to be so sure that I'm not like sending my stuff into the ether literally when I'm working. So just like really that was like my big contribution, was like I really just wanted to emphasize that that's just so difficult for everybody in terms of if you're experienced with blockchain or you're not. It's just immediately like our human brains are designed to see patterns, and that's the complete antithesis of a secure wallet address. So something like what 3 words, if you guys aren't familiar, is actually a really cool project to check out, where they took, I think it's 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer grid of the entire world, and they assigned it 3 random words. So thanks for pulling that up there.
Cool.
Yeah, so something similar to that, integrated into a wallet would be just so much simpler.
Yeah. Yeah, so thank you so much. I am so glad you guys at least got to see a little bit more about, the design process as it happens in product development, and a little bit of those examples as it applies to a use case for building something in the blockchain, and through my work and personal examples. I hope that this makes you feel a little bit more confident, even at least seeing like what kinds of artifacts you can create. Please slide into my DM or email for feedback. And actually, as you're working through your projects, I do have office hours for the remainder of the program to help you with your pitch decks, your presentation, user flows. Like, this is up to date, so feel free to book time in my calendar. I know that part of at least the architecture track, you do have to create a user flow. So happy to go through all the different kinds of user flows you can create, because there's like wire flows, UI flows, task flows, like, and sometimes it can get like really intimidating figuring out what you want to do, or to what fidelity do you want to do it. So thank you so much. And this is actually a gift from Sarah Zucker, who's an OG crypto artist. She like does a lot of like taking like old VHS and then like kind of remixing them, making them into these cool GIFs. So I love her. And also I love, there's like a podcast that I really like that she talked about getting into crypto and NFTs. This one's called Civil Rights Television GIF.
Yeah, I love this. It would be amazing if you can share these links on the Bloom Discord, ideally in the public channel for the links that are public, and then for people in the cohort in our sanctuary. And again, thank you so much for giving this presentation and workshop. I'm so happy that we were able to incorporate this like essential piece of the process. So yeah, I really appreciate you being here and your time. And thank you again for everyone for joining.
Thanks, Val. Thanks, everyone.